Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm hoping to keep this video pretty short. I do have a couple of other videos out about homeschooling, but just keep in mind our children are grown. At the time I'm shooting this, they're now 28 and 31 and they have families of their own. So some of the stuff that I share is based on how I homeschooled my own children. And so even the books and stuff that I'm most familiar with are going to be maybe a bit outdated. But if there was one book I was going to recommend to all people, no matter where you're at in your journey, is to get the Charlotte Mason Companion. Here's an image of it right here. It's an excellent book. And, I especially recommend getting it before you start and reading through it because it has such a natural approach to homeschooling. And I think that is what a lot of people it really brings to light some things that when you were one that was a product of public school, you have this image of what school is supposed to be like. You have to be at a desk and you got to sit and do this work for so many hours per day. This really just goes back to the natural old-fashioned way of schooling and how we should learn. And then also learning how to tailor your child's education to your child's needs. And so I think it's just an excellent place to start. So if, maybe some of the books I used for as far as workbooks and whatnot might be outdated, but that is something I don't think is ever going to go out of style. And through that, you can learn to find your own rhythm and your own style when it comes to your children. But the main thing I wanted to talk about today is that because we've been made to believe this false image of what schooling needs to be like, it's hard for us to imagine that your child's schooling can be done in, as far as the sit down and working with them time, in 2 hours or less per day. That's typically all the time your child's going to need through most of their schooling years. Now in high school, there's going to probably be more of that bookwork time involved. However, by that point, your child should be such an independent learner that they don't need so much sit down one-on-one time. And the reason I bring this up is because so many people just think they cannot do it. Maybe both parents work outside the home and they have no other choice. Maybe you're a single parent and obviously you're having to work. When are you ever going to have time to educate your own child? Well, I absolutely 100% believe through my own experiences of homeschooling my own children all throughout that you can do it. Because what you got to realize is that, look at, those of you who already have your children in the public school system, or you're thinking about your own public school education. How many hours of homework did you have each night after coming home from school? So after spending nearly a full day at school, your children are still coming home and doing 1, 2, or even 3 hours worth of homework. Why is that? Because the work that needs to be done, the actual education, is no longer happening in the public school education system. That time is being wasted on so many other things, when homeschooling is a far more productive way to educate your child. So let me break this down a little bit. So again, that 1 to 2 hours per day is really all the time you need for the actual sitting down education and doing bookwork. So this is going to be your basics. This is going to be reading, writing, and arithmetic. And all that can be done in that time, especially when you're talking about the elementary school ages. And obviously you're tailoring this education to suit your child's needs. Like some children, my two boys were very, very different. My oldest son, he was so easy to teach how to read. He just picked it up like that. Where my youngest son struggled and struggled and struggled. So I had to learn how to tailor his education to suit him and put some of that stuff aside and work on the things that he could do, such as learning basic math skills. That was something he could grasp a lot easier than the actual reading and the reading comprehension. And eventually, as his physiology developed, because that's usually where the struggles come from, it has nothing to do with how intelligent a student is, but how physically developed they are within their body, the eye muscles and more. And it can take time, and it's more common in boys than it is girls for them to be a little bit delayed in this physical development that makes it easy for them to learn how to read. I learned a lot more with my younger son in how to develop his skills than I did with my older son, because he caught on to those kind of things so much easier than my younger son. And that there too is also another beauty of homeschooling, is that you're not going to get that in the public school system, because the teachers don't have that kind of time to sit around and work with each student individually and tailor the education to each one of the students and to match their learning styles, because every child's going to be different in their learning style and what works best for them. A child, which is a more common in boys, that's more kinesthetic and learns through the actual doing and the touching. And this is why boys you just got to move so much. That's where they learn. So it's the hands-on stuff. So once you understand this, you realize that there is a huge amount, in fact, the biggest amount of their real education happens in the actual doing, in the real life, day-to-day activities, in the chores that they do, in the helping in the kitchen to make things, in going to the store and helping the parents shop and pick out what's the best deal. A lot of math comes into play here. And then just the basic common skills that every person should know before they graduate from high school. And these are the skills that are no longer being taught in public school. They're not taught home ec anymore. They're not even taught how to keep their own books. I mean, the kids are coming out of school and having no comprehension of these kind of things. I've watched over the years, as someone who taught dance and martial arts, I watched in the 27, 28 years that I was teaching, the difference in kids that were, in the public school system from the time I started back in 1989 was when I first started teaching, to when I finally retired from that kind of work. Just the difference in what kids could do and what they could grasp, and how little common sense so many students that, they might have been intelligent kids, but the common sense and the ability to do just very basic things that years before 3 and 4-year-olds could handle, that now I've got 10, 11, and 12-year-olds that just can't get it. And that's because it's not because they're not smart enough, it's because they're just not being taught basic things that every child, every person should learn along the way. So it's once we realize that the major source of a child's education actually comes from the everyday activities that you do together, especially as a family, going places, being active, going to the beach, going out in nature, taking a walk and examining the things. This is where the science comes into play, and learning about geology. All these things just naturally start to happen. But the reading, writing, and arithmetic, that's the stuff that you focus on in the sit-down work. And again, that time that you put into that and the way that you're teaching, other types of books that you're using, and that is all going to be dependent on that particular child and how best they can learn. So I will link back to the videos I've done where I think I go into more about my own experiences and give a little bit more details of what worked for me. But I just want to put that out there, because a lot of people still have this, they're afraid, or they don't think they can do it, but you can. It does not matter your education level. You can do it. And once your child is able to read instructions for themselves, there is so much they can do to teach their own selves. So one of the first steps is teaching your child to just simply be an independent learner. And once they do that as far as the parents' time involved in the actual, teaching, by the time they get into even junior high age, there's little a parent has to do other than making sure they're getting their work done and correcting it. But, by the time my kids were high school age, they were correcting their own work, and I trusted them with that, because I knew that when they got a problem wrong and they found it wrong, they would go back and rework that problem and find out what it was they did wrong. And the child actually learns better from that than they do from just saying, okay, well, this is wrong. they're going to learn better from correcting their own work. You obviously have to hold them accountable, but just like any of us, sometimes we learn the most from our mistakes than we do from our successes. So anyway, my point in this video was just to give some encouragement in this area, and just if you're really thinking about it and you've been on the fence because you just don't think you can, or you don't have the time because you have to work outside the home and so on and so forth, just kind of weigh some of these things out. And I honestly, truly believe that anyone can do this. It's not near as hard as we've been made to believe it is. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please, any experienced homeschooling parents out there, whether it be that you're my age or older and you homeschooled your kids, or you're homeschooling your kids now, please share your experiences, maybe some of your favorite books and education material down below so people can learn from you as well. And let's just continue to encourage people in this area. And I think the biggest thing is, yes, you're smart enough, and yes, you're patient enough. You just have to learn like all the rest of us did. It's all a learning process for the parents as well as the kids. So anyway, thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.